can I see this? My own slides. There we go. So I know we made an announcement that although the class is on the intimacy in marriages for those in the ministry, this class would be appropriate actually for any person to come in here. You could have a teenager in here. I'm not going to talk about anatomy and physiology today, so won't scare anybody too much. I'm going to actually just take this off. So what are we going to talk about then? What do the scriptures say? My lover, my friend. This is God's intention, right? By the way, I'm a bit of a fire hose. I'm going to zing you with a ton of information in the little bit of time I have. I found the one my heart loves. We are called to be one flesh. My lover is mine when we're married, and I am his. You have captured my heart, my sister, my bride. And one of my favorites, let me hear your voice. God does have a beautiful intention for marital relationships. But you guys have some unique challenges, so I want to talk about them. Because sometimes ministry and marriage can feel like unseen rivals. You know, which one do I prioritize? If I prioritize this one, does it mean I'm taking away from that one? Right? Marriage ministry events are often still ministry for you. You go to a marriage retreat, and what are you doing for it? Are you just sitting there just for your own marriage? Not very often, right? Being co-partners in ministry doesn't always mean you're co-lovers in marriage. I get to work with the privilege of working with a lot of people in the ministry, and this does come up quite a bit, right? Also, you're pouring yourselves out, and there can be an emotional depletion. You know, people that are raising small children, I give to my kids, or you're in a full-time job that just exhausts you. And then you come home and like, okay, I'm supposed to give to this person when I'm like totally depleted. Or you might be teaching and preaching publicly and feel hypocritical because it's not going well in your marriage. So and who do you talk to about that? Because it's a bit of a fishbowl. I'm going to talk about that some more. Or just sometimes those unrealistic expectations of, you're in the ministry. You're supposed to be this great, perfect example of marriage, sexuality, parenting, and everything else, right? And then, honestly, if you're not prioritizing your own rest and your own refreshment, we had that conversation earlier. If you're not, then and you might actually not agree between the two of you just how much should go where. What does prioritizing rest look like? So that fishbowl piece where, what if you mess up sexually in your marriage especially, and it means you could lose your job. If you're an engineer, you wouldn't lose your job. But if you're in the ministry, so that fishbowl thing of being able to talk openly and honestly, especially about sexuality. And if you're having a lot of conflict, sometimes, especially in the circumstances you guys are in where there's so much more isolation, that isolation is all the more deepened about who do I talk to about conflicts in our marriage. So what else? You are expected to not only inform people of the truth, but to live an exemplary life, to show that truth. Not only are you supposed to teach it, but you're supposed to be the perfect example of it. And you might yourself be thinking, or you feel it from other people, that you're supposed to be, this kind of goes with the point earlier, exempt from marital and sexual difficulties. You know, you're not supposed to have those. And if there is, in your case, a lack of support and instruction and encouragement towards emotional and sexual maturity, and I emphasize both, not just sexual maturity, emotional maturity, because people come in, they are taught how to help people become Christians, but that doesn't mean they know how to have deep, intimate relationships, right? And so if you don't have the room to grow in your own emotional maturity, and then you don't have the support to grow in it in your marriage now, that can really impact things. We do know, this is from overall research. I'll show you our fellowship's research. 1/3 of ministry couples are having sexual difficulties. So by the way, what am I? I'm a marriage and family therapist. I have a doctorate in psychology, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm a certified sex therapist and a certified chemical dependency counselor. So I work a lot with couples who are struggling, honestly, right? And about half my couples come because they're struggling with sexuality. So that's what I'm referring to here. About 1/3 are having some kind of difficulty in their functioning sexually, erectile dysfunction, sexual pain, things like that. 12% are involved in physical relationships outside of their marriage, and 38% on pornography. Our numbers in our fellowship are not far from that. I'm going to show those to you in a little bit. So how do you, okay, I just went back and didn't mean to, how do you, in the midst of those challenges, prioritize having good emotional and sexual maturity? I'm going to just briefly tap on all the things that I do. So what I would really like to come out and do a full workshop for your ministry. So today you're going to get the taste. I'm going to show you the taste right now. You need good verbal and emotional intimacy. What does that mean? First of all, we've been hearing a bit about having a good connection to God, right? I was in Alaska for 10 days all by myself because nobody happened to be at the retreat center there in Alaska. So all by myself, me and God and Jesus and the Holy Spirit. I was like, the four of us. And I focused on Jesus that week. And for the first time in my life, I realized I feel very loved by God, very taken care of by God. And I'm amazed by Jesus, but I don't know, he's so sad. He's the one that was on this earth. But I don't always feel his love towards me, right? So the Holy Spirit put it in my brain, and it was doing all kinds of other cool things that week. And one of the things I did was I went through the book of John and wrote down everywhere Jesus was warm, compassionate, kind, affectionate, loving, and encouraging. And then I pictured myself as the person he was with when he was being that way. It was revolutionary. We have to continually grow in our closeness to God and Jesus. So that is the basis of all the other stuff I'm going to hit on. And then, how well are you doing sharing genuinely heart to heart? Some of us, like I said, we didn't grow up with those skills. We didn't learn those skills growing up. Are we learning those skills? How is your conflict going? So I have a whole process I take my clients through called validation, where they learn to understand and have empathy. Why do we need to learn that? Because sometimes we're not very good at it, right? Resolving conflict. This is what people call it. We resolved that really well. That's great. Were you more connected at the end of the conflict? Maybe now you understand each other. I'm not talking about understanding and fixing, having a solution. Were you more connected at the end of it? So, understanding and empathy. What do I mean? So the purpose of this class is to talk about your intimacy. By the way, just in case you're wondering, this class isn't for your members. This class is for you. For your marriage. Okay? I'm in San Diego, and I said, look, I can help and teach and do these workshops in San Diego, but you need to I'm right here. You need to have me do a workshop for the staff. The next time you have a staff retreat, have me come do it for your marriages. They haven't taken me up on it, but I'll come do it for you. Honestly, you guys need help in your marriages because your lives are taking a huge toll on all the giving that you're doing. So what do I mean when I say intimacy? This is from the research, by the way. I'm going to just show you the last bullet. The perception that one is fully known deeply and authentically on one hand, and meaning you know all my junk, but you're loved, accepted, respected, and cared for on the other. You like me. Even though you know all the crud inside of me, you like me, right? Why is it important? We actually know that by research, only 15% of couples experience that. Sit with that number. I got asked by one of the churches internationally to come and do one of my workshops, and they said, well, on sexuality, and they said, we only have probably about a 10% of our couples that struggle with this area. And I said, well, actually, let me inform you that when I get with a whole church, I do a questionnaire beforehand, and it's 60% of our fellowship are struggling in their intimacy. Right? So our numbers are not off some of these research numbers, right? Only a small fraction of even ministry couples feel that this is what's happening in their marriage, okay? So I'm not talking to your people, I'm talking to you, all right? Just to clarify, what do I mean by that? Of the 15%, and it's actually 25% more during tough times, so about 40%, do the lower four. We can get really good at living together, sharing cliches, facts, opinions, but how are sharing the heart-to-heart hopes and dreams, feelings, fears, failures, weaknesses, needs? Those are, Kyle talked about vulnerability, right? Those are the vulnerability things. How's that going? And how are you doing when your spouse shares them with you? How are you doing in really hearing it, right? So here's the stats, 15%. Why is it important? Actually, intimacy, if someone's a first responder, a doctor, someone's a therapist, actually their health is better. They have less suicidal ideation. Their mental health is better if they have somebody that they're intimate with. So it's vital to your health, not just physically, but obviously of your ministries as well. If we had time, I would have you practice this. So we're going to do the very, very short version. I want you to think in your mind right now, either you're with your partner or with somebody else you know next to you. Think of one thing that happened this week that was a little rough. Try to think in your mind of one sentence, not with your partner, by the way. Nothing with your partner. Just something that happened this week. Like, a hard thing that happened to me this week was one sentence, right? Now think in your mind, one thing that was really encouraging to me this week was, think that in your mind. Now what you're going to do is you're going to turn to the person next to you and you're going to say, one thing that was difficult for me this week was, one sentence, one sentence, one sentence. Then the other person's going to reflect it. One thing that was difficult for you this week was, all right? Then the other person goes, okay, so one thing that was difficult for me this week was, you're going to share it and the other one's going to reflect it, all right? And then you're going to do the same thing with one thing that was encouraging this week, all right? So turn to the person next to you. If you are not with a partner and there's just somebody sitting with you that you can do this with, if not, you can type it into your phone and share it with somebody you're close to later. On your marks, we're going to do this quickly in about 1 minute. Get set, go. Type it into your phone if someone's not with you. Twenty more seconds. Okay, that will give you more to talk about and share about later tonight. Real quickly, show me your hands. With one word, how did that feel? Good? Awesome? Encouraging? Informative? Validating? Relatable? What was that? Fondly? Badly or fondly? Bonding, there we go. Badly, maybe too. So, often what people will say is that it didn't go very well and it looked a little bit like this. Or maybe a little bit like this. Or maybe a little bit like this. So sometimes when you try to do what you just did, which was really risky, actually, but that's why I gave you guidelines. One sentence. Share, reflect. Learn more about that. If you really liked it, this is my whole model. And it's in my book. It's actually got the longest amount of material in The Art of Intimate Marriage. This isn't a sales pitch. You can actually, on the artofintimatemarriage.com, you can listen to about 50 podcasts on all of this. This is the key of the work I do, which is the last word on there, the word empathy. It's the greatest thing we need in our marriages. I'm going to go on. What else do we need? A good rule of thumb: before you touch your body, touch your soul. You could put the word him in there too. So we're going to get to the physical part after the break. These are the areas that I work in. When I do a full workshop, I hit all 6 of these areas. We're going to do 2 seconds on about 4 of those right now. What do I mean by relational intimacy? So this is the face-to-face. This is the friendship. This is the, we just did the face-to-face. Relational intimacy is the shoulder-to-shoulder. This is the having fun together, the friendship in marriage. So it says it in Song of Solomon, my lover, my friend. Are you adventuring together? How's your spiritual intimacy? So I have a whole list of questions that you can go buy the Ungame, the Christian version of the Ungame, and improve your spiritual intimacy just by playing some card games. Dates and romance, how's it going? It's one of the biggest things that people tell me is we're not going on dates. And what about the small intimacies? I'm going to show you what I do to build that. One is I help people talk about it. So this is one of the exercises that's in my book. One thing I worry about is, you'll notice this reflects the words we looked at earlier about the 7 levels of intimacy. One thing I worry about is, so it's exactly what we did just now about something that was good this week and something that was hard this week. These are the prompts that I give couples. They face each other, look at each other eye to eye, say the sentence, and the other one reflects it. By the way, when you're reflecting, you don't add your own words. You literally just mirror back. Often, we won't be able to have the time to do this today, but I'll say, so how did that feel? And 100% of the time people go, I felt validated. And all the person did was say it back to you. There's something so powerful about, well, you really have to listen to reflect back. And you feel listened to when someone does that, right? So sometimes you need to do stuff like this, but maybe not like this. I actually teach this workshop all over and in different fellowships. And one church that I did it at, they were like, Jennifer, we need you to take that slide out or put some pants on him. And I was like, what? So anyway, yes, his butt is bare, and this is how far we've come, that we're sharing a bare butt in a workshop. So how do we create good intimacy in marriage, recreationally? So you can actually go online and just pull up the Recreational Companionship Inventory. It goes by a couple different names on really how to improve your adventuring together. Are you laughing and having fun? And it's a list of like 100 different activities, figuring out what are some new ways to adventure together. I have a simple exercise where you take 2 cups, and John writes down 2 things for Barry that he would like her to do, and he puts them in a cup, and Barry writes down 2 things that she'd like John to do, and she puts it in a cup. And that week, John does the ones that Barry put in the cup, and Barry does the ones that John put in the cup. And guess what? They had 4 little moments of intimacy that week. It is amazing how simple little things like that. I have a couple that I worked with who did a sex therapy with me, and I do follow-ups, 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. And at their 1-year follow-up, they said, yeah, we bought cups, and they have our names on it. We've been doing it every week, since then, for the whole year. And I was like, oh, I love it. Sometimes we just need little helps to help us really, prioritize the intimacy in our marriage. This is just another on how to feel close. This is the same thing. It's a bunch of prompt and reflection exercises, just like I gave you to do a minute ago. I don't know how many of you want to do this kind of adventure between the 2 of you, but, go for it. Wow, I did so good. I popped through that. I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to pass my break sign and go into the next part, all right? That means I get to spend more time on the last part, which makes me happy. Okay, so what about the physical part of your relationship? So we're not talking sex, we're talking affection. How is it going? The affection part, affectionate intimacy, touch and affection intimacy, and sensual intimacy are the 2 biggest areas I end up, after we get through conflict, that I end up working with couples on, especially sensual intimacy. Touch is vital. Why? So we actually know from a lot of the research that without touch, people's health goes down, their mental health goes down, And guess what? It impacts their marriage. And yet a lot of couples they might be still having sex, but there's not a lot of affection. The term that I always use is we hold hands together and then we have sex and nothing in between. How is that part of your marriage going? So we lost some of it on there, but you get the idea. So when I work with touch, especially in intimate relationships, there's 3 levels. The first level is whole skin touch. So this has to do with affection, like when you're saying hello to each other, we do the kind of side hug. And do I hug? Because then my breasts might touch his chest, so we'll go like this. We are not sure how to do affection between 2 people that aren't married, right? But actually, that's the case in marriages. We don't always talk about, how do you like to hold hands? I worked with a couple that were in their 70s, and they held hands like this, right? She'd never told him that she hated that, and she preferred holding hands like this. They'd never had that discussion. So talking about preferences on how to hold hands, how to hug. Some people are like, I just don't like hugging that long. Or like when we kiss, like I just want it to be short, because then if you use your tongue, when's the last time we each had conversations about all of those types of intimacy that have to do with things other than actually having sex? Level 3 is the whole skin touch. That often is not happening in couples where they might hold hands when they walk, but they're not necessarily putting the hands on the shoulders, the hands on the head. This is one that's often missing to the scalp. Or the only times that the thighs get touched is during sex. So how is those kinds of touches happening? Are there massages to the calf, to the forearm? So those are the type of level 3 touch. Level 2 touch is all of those more sensitive and more private areas. Like if my brother described it, he lived in New York City and got on a bus, he sits down at his seat, and while he's sitting, the person next to him reaches over and puts their hand on his thigh. And he was like, right? But if your partner does that, that's a more private area. So that's a little more okay, right? Not if a stranger does. So that's what we're talking about. Level 2 touch is both more private and actually more sensitive. So everybody go ahead and put out your arm. Touch the top of your arm. Now turn your arm over and touch the inside. You have a lot more nerve endings there, so it's a lot more sensitive. That's level 2. This is level 3. So tougher skin, thinner skin, lots of more nerve endings. Those are the kinds of touches that are at level 2 that are missing from so many marriages. Level 3 is obviously all things genital and sexual. So what we often are missing is the warm, intimate gestures that are not focused. Look at these next few words. Not focused on breasts, buttocks, and genitals. So one of the biggest things that comes up is I feel like I get groped. The only time, I'm just going to say it, the only time he touches me, because it's often a he to a she, the husband to the wife, is my buttocks and my breasts. Like, if that is the verbiage that's happening between you, then you probably want to work on all the other areas of their body. Cuddling and caressing, so I'm going to go into this more, is with no strings attached. When's the last time? So anybody ever heard of Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage? Funny. His one on sexuality is so funny. He's Puerto Rican, and he's describing how I caress my wife's body up, and I caress her body down, and I touch her all over, and then I take the blanket, and I put it over her, and we go to sleep. And you're thinking, brothers, if I do that, I would go blind. You will not go blind. So he's very funny. And he's talking about what would it be like to touch and cuddle and caress and get aroused and go to sleep? I don't know, is that allowed? Actually, I would say it's not only allowed, but it's vital. It's the single biggest thing that I actually help couples with who come to see me when it comes to the intimate physical part of their relationship, is that the only time that sensual touch happens is when sex happens afterwards. Let's turn that around in the couples in this audience. Let's make that different in here, where the intimate touch sensually happening in here changes. If you want to help the couples in your ministry, this would be probably one of the single biggest areas I would start with. We're going to have a break. I'll see you in 5 minutes.